California's cautious optimism on this Friday night, the progress being made, and the volatile conditions.
We're not out of the woods.
The false evacuation alerts causing unnecessary panic, and the pets being rescued. The rules of running in the Liberal leadership race, when a new leader will be chosen, and why another high-profile cabinet minister is saying no thanks. The U.S. president-elect sentenced in that hush money case, why Donald Trump is dodging jail time. Plus, getting wired underwater.
Countries are really starting to realize, how important these cables are.
A Canadian company helping build an information highway on the ocean floor.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Sarah McDonald.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Firefighters in Los Angeles appear to be making some progress tonight after a catastrophic and unprecedented 4-day siege. But multiple major wildfires are still burning, leaving the United States' second largest city unrecognizable and on edge.
Due to the favorable overnight weather conditions and the diligent, and I'll focus on the diligent work and effort and commitment of our first responders, we can report that the Palisades fire is now 8% contained.
A brief pause in fierce hurricane-force winds allowed crews to attack the devastating fires from the sky today. But as progress is made, the scale of destruction in the greater Los Angeles area is coming into horrifying focus. Entire neighborhoods, once some of the country's most affluent, reduced to rubble. 10 people have been confirmed dead, and that number could grow.
It looks like a bomb, an atomic bomb dropped in these areas. I don't expect good news, and we're not looking forward to those numbers.
The Palisades fire is the most concerning, with more than 8,000 hectares already scorched. And with at least 5 other fires currently burning, crews are stretched to the limit. More than 150,000 people have been forced to flee their homes. Officials are warning strong winds are expected to return in the coming days as they urge residents to stay vigilant. Our Neetu Garcha begins our coverage tonight from Los Angeles. Neetu.
Sarah, that forecast doesn't have the news many of the residents in evacuated zones like this one want to hear, because any gust can quickly make a wildfire situation like this one much worse. As dawn broke over Los Angeles Friday, a thick veil of smoke hung heavy across the Topanga Canyon. With resources stretched thin, Los Angeles City Councilor Tracy Park is urging residents to stay alert.
We're not out of the woods, and as the winds continue to blow, things can shift and more things could happen.
More than 900 members of the California National Guard have been deployed throughout Los Angeles. Curfews have been put in place to prevent looting in evacuated areas.
Anybody caught looting or committing crimes in the affected areas will be arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Along the Topanga Canyon, we saw how active fire conditions are keeping fire crews on alert.
A few hot spots on this mountainside just beside a main road forced a few fire trucks to stop. You can see the crews now in action, working hard to put them out.
Heightening the tensions around the region already on edge, residents have been getting erroneous emergency alerts urging them to evacuate even though they weren't close to any of the fires.
There is an extreme amount of frustration, anger, fear with regards to the erroneous messages. We have every technical specialist working to resolve this issue.
This is honestly probably the worst I've ever seen it. And not only that, just the magnitude of the fact that all our resources are spread so thin across multiple different fires in the area.
In another setback, a Canadian firefighting aircraft was grounded after colliding with a drone, raising serious safety concerns. President Joe Biden has pledged more federal support, but warned the threat is far from over, with officials now planning ahead for long-term implications.
It's not uncommon after our rainy seasons for land and mudslides to begin, and now we have a huge risk of that in the Pacific Palisades.
And in that Pacific Palisades area, questions are being raised about the region's water infrastructure, with reports a major reservoir was out of commission for repairs when the flames broke out, leaving firefighters without the vital resource they needed at a critical moment. Is this a learning opportunity?
It absolutely is, and I think Some of the situations that we've had with respect to the water, some of the evacuation procedures, the messaging and communication that has come out raises more questions than we have answers for.
As the sun sets on another devastating day, Los Angeles is looking ahead, knowing the road to recovery will be a long one.
Sarah, firefighters will certainly have their work cut out for them, especially with that forecast predicting more winds over the coming days. Officials are just reminding people, whether in an evacuation zone or in an area that could quickly become at risk, to closely follow the advice of local officials. Sarah?
Neetu Garcha in Los Angeles tonight. Thank you, Neetu. Support is pouring in from around the world for fire victims in Southern California. The National Football League announced a $5 million donation today. The league is also moving Monday night's wild card game involving the LA Rams to Arizona. It is not just people fleeing the flames, but their pets as well. Many are now finding temporary shelter in hotels with their owners. Close to 300 shelters across California are also taking in pets and farm animals displaced by the fires. And in one Altadena neighborhood, almost completely leveled by flames, a cat owner returned to some unexpected and emotional news.
The whole street, there's only like 3 apartment buildings that survived, and ours was one of them. He wouldn't get in the carrier, and the flames were coming. I had to leave. It was horrific having to leave him here, but I got him.
Stories like hers, however, are sadly few and far between in Altadena, where nearly 5,000 homes have now burned. And joining me now is Global News meteorologist Peter Quinlan. Peter, with the region already enduring so much, what is the weather outlook there for this weekend? And most importantly, how could it impact these fires?
We're going to be seeing some relief over the weekend finally, and that is because this Santa Ana wind setup where we get this hot desert air combining with an offshore flow that basically causes a compression of the air, a heating of the air as well as it sinks south, kind of like the Chinook winds we see in southern Alberta. That setup is going to decrease as we get these wind rows flowing along the coast, but the Santa Ana wind setup is going to reestablish itself into next week, especially on Tuesday. We're actually going to see a setup similar to what we saw last Tuesday, and that is quite concerning. So temperatures will stay warm this weekend. We will still see a crossover in terms of the relative humidity falling below the temperature, which leads to explosive fire development. But that won't be coupled with the winds until Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. So that's the area of concern in terms of the next few days that we will be watching very closely. There is not a drop of rain on the way in terms of the foreseeable future. Temperature-wise, we do have some relief later next week and into the following weekend as daytime highs get dropped to the teens. That will help improve the situation, but what won't is the fact that the Santa Ana wind season typically lasts right through until May. So if we don't see any significant moisture, we're expected to see a moderate to high fire danger rating sticking around in the Los Angeles basin right through the next several months. Sarah.
Okay, relief could not come soon enough. Global News meteorologist Peter Quinlan, thanks. There is no denying that our planet is warming at an alarming and dangerous rate. The past 10 years have all set heat records, and those records would never have been set had the heating been caused solely by natural factors. The evidence is clear. Humans are key contributors to the climate crisis. And as Eric Sorensen reports, the question isn't whether we have the technology to solve the problem, it's whether we have the will.
Look no further than Los Angeles to find devastation that scientists say is caused at least in part by climate change. A years-long drought with higher temperatures making drier conditions that are fueling wildfires. It's the new reality in a world that broke temperature records again last year.
All the data sets are, quite clear. We are heading in the wrong direction.
It's not just Southern California wildfires. Rising temperatures are melting Arctic ice and warming the oceans, which contributed to back-to-back massive hurricanes in Florida just 3 months ago.
The past 10 years are the 10 warmest years on record. And we saw exceptional temperatures in the ocean, the highest ever recorded by humans.
Global warming is plain to see from NASA, measuring the world's surface temperatures over the last 60 years, especially recently. And it's acute in the Arctic, which affects Canada. And here are the hard numbers from recent decades, the warmest years, the last 10, with 2024 reaching 1.6 degrees above the pre-industrial average. That's just 1 year, but scientists say the global warming trend is obvious and dire.
But is the political will trending in the opposite direction? In Canada, the carbon tax to combat climate change could soon be abolished.
A very dangerous and worrying trend. We've got a lot of world leaders, and including a potential change in the Canadian government, to go in the wrong direction.
A big concern is U.S. President-elect Donald Trump pushing his agenda back onto the world stage.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord.
Climate diplomats shudder.
If that were to happen, that would be a serious blow for international climate diplomacy. And yet, at the same time, the problem will not go away.
What's happening in Los Angeles is an ominous beginning to 2025. On the heels of the hottest year on record, some scientists believe our goal one day will be to cool the planet to the temperatures we had in 2024. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly is off to Washington next week to push the incoming Trump administration to back off on damaging tariffs. Joly says that is her top priority, not running for the Liberal leadership. And we're starting to hear from other possible contenders, too, now that the Liberals have revealed the rules around the leadership process. Mackenzie Gray joins us now with who's expected to make an announcement next. Mackenzie.
After years of flirting with the Liberal Party, Sarah, Mark Carney is set to announce he's running for the leadership next week, with the former Bank of Canada and England governor set to have the support of over 30 MPs, according to a source close to Carney, but he won't be battling against one of the most prominent current cabinet ministers.
I have a deep sense of duty towards my country, and that's why, ultimately, I'm making sure to take this difficult decision.
A duty Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly says is to focus on dealing with potential U.S. tariffs, following the footsteps of Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc by staying in cabinet instead of running for Prime Minister. But it's not for a lack of confidence.
To be frank, I think that our chances were really, really high.
Other candidates considering their chances now that the Liberal Party has announced the next PM will be chosen on March 9th, and it'll cost candidates $350,000 to join the race. Only Canadian citizens and permanent residents who are Liberal Party members can pick the new leader, a change from the Liberal Constitution, which previously allowed temporary foreign workers and international students to participate in the vote. Changes made to limit potential foreign interference.
I'm very pleased that the party has taken a very strong stance on this and been proactive from the get-go.
With some rules in place, other potential candidates are now likely to show their cards, including former Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and House Leader Karina Gould, who a source close to her says is seriously considering a bid.
It's a good day to be a Liberal when you have folks like that across different parts of the party, across different parts of the country that are wanting to step up and lead.
Former BC Premier Christy Clark has been organizing a leadership run for months.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous, ici Christy Clark.
But Liberal MPs tell Global News even her own team now admits her French is not strong.
And Mackenzie Joly is framing the reason she won't run for Liberal leader as keeping her focus on her current portfolio, as we heard, and the threat of tariffs. But it's likely there's another factor she and other potential candidates are considering here.
Yeah, and that reason, Sarah, might sound a little weird, but it's tradition. The Liberal Party has historically rotated back and forth from Francophone to Anglophone leaders, going all the way back to Sir Wilfrid Laurier. And there's a feeling amongst Liberal MPs and insiders that we've talked to that since Justin Trudeau's a Quebecer, it's likely that an Anglophone leader will be elected next. And that's weighing on Quebec MPs deciding if they should run or not. Now, despite that, if your mother tongue is English and you can't speak French, it's still very unlikely that you'll get this job. And that's a major issue for potential candidates like Christy Clark. Now, those thinking of running are also waiting on the party to decide how the vote will actually work, how much candidates can spend on their campaign, and what city, Sarah, the new leader will be elected in.
Okay, lots to come. Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa. Thanks. Canada's labour market closed out the year with some unexpected positive news. StatsCan data shows the economy gained 91,000 jobs in December. That figure is at least 4 times higher than what economists had predicted. The unemployment rate barely moved and is sitting at 6.7%. That has some economists predicting the Bank of Canada may hold interest rates steady in its next policy decision later this month. Crime and lack of punishment for Donald Trump. Coming up, how the U.S. president-elect and convicted felon was sentenced in that hush money case. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump was sentenced today in his high-profile hush money case, and he has avoided both jail time and a fine. The decision caps a landmark case that saw Trump convicted of 34 counts of falsifying business records related to a payment made to an adult film star during the 2016 election. He returns to the White House freely in 10 days' time. But as Jackson Proskow reports, Trump says he still plans to appeal.
History unfolded over video chat as the former and future U.S. president appeared on a courtroom screen. Before Donald Trump was sentenced, prosecutors noted his continued defiance, despite being found guilty by a jury.
The defendant sees himself as above the law and won't accept responsibility for his actions.
Trump offered no apology and showed no sign of contrition.
This has been a very terrible experience.
He maintains there was nothing wrong with the hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels ahead of the 2016 election, which were meant to buy her silence about an alleged affair with Trump.
They called a legal fee or a legal expense, and for this, I got indicted. But the fact is that I'm totally innocent. I did nothing wrong, and I'd just like to explain that I was treated very, very unfairly.
In fact, Trump was treated unlike any other defendant. He was sentenced to a mere unconditional discharge. No jail time, no fine, and no probation.
Sir, I wish you Godspeed as you assume your second term in office.
The court acknowledged it was the only realistic option for a man who will assume the presidency in just 10 days.
If President Trump had not been reelected here, I think we can safely say that the sentence would have been somewhat more harsh.
The conviction is still a stain on his legacy. He will become the first convicted felon to hold the presidency. It's also a test of the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity. Despite a last-ditch attempt by Trump, the court did not block the sentencing from proceeding. The court may eventually be asked to rule on Trump's promised appeal.
I would expect the Trump defense team to take that all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary.
Notably, Trump cannot pardon himself from these state charges, even as he prepares to return to office as a man largely above the reach of the law. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
Ahead, Venezuela's president keeps his grip on power, America's rising bounty for his arrest. That's after the break. Tonight, the U.S. Supreme Court seems poised to uphold a law to ban TikTok in the United States unless the Chinese-owned app is sold to an American company in less than 2 weeks. Today, justices heard arguments from lawyers, content creators, and the U.S. government. Congress calls the platform's Chinese ownership a national security risk. TikTok argues the law violates the U.S. Constitution's protections around free speech. It is unclear when the Supreme Court will hand down its decision or if its China-based parent company ByteDance will sell by January 19th. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has been sworn in for a third consecutive term, defying international rejection of his retention of power. At his inauguration today, Maduro vowed this 6-year term would be a period of peace, prosperity, and equality. Many countries have denounced him as illegitimate after credible evidence, including vote tallies, showed his opponents won the election. Maduro has led an authoritarian regime since 2013, known for human rights violations, including extrajudicial killings. Today, the United States upped its bounty for Maduro's arrest to $25 million. And Canada imposed new sanctions on Venezuelan officials. The race to place cable deep underwater. Next, the critical infrastructure that most Canadians will never see. When we talk telecommunication, we tend to think of phones or satellites. But what about cables on the ocean floor? Though you've likely never seen them or even heard of them. Subsea cables are crucial to connecting our planet. But after some were severed in the Baltic Sea, security is top of mind. Our Heidi Petracek took a tour with a Canadian company laying down cables and repairing a critical network.
And this is what we use to lay cable along the ocean floor.
This machinery helps make modern communication possible on a ship specifically designed to lay subsea cable on the ocean floor, owned by IT International Telecom.
99% of all global communications travel via submarine cables.
I think that's a fact that most folks probably don't realize. It's all happening underwater.
You've got the yellow and black, that'll be armored cable.
Stored on these massive spools, inside the cable's protective sheath is where the magic is. The hair-like fiber optic strands able to carry vast amounts of data. While we can't see it, there's a mind-boggling array of these cables deep underwater, enough to cross the sun. This shows just a fraction of them, the complicated web connecting Canada and the U.S. to the rest of the world. Right now I'm standing on about 100 kilometers worth of subsea cable here, but this cable tank on the ship can carry much more than that. It would actually normally go all the way up to the top there.
There's more capacity out there, more cables, more demand. Internet exploded the amount of data that's transferred around the world.
That's keeping firms like this busy laying down new lines and fixing broken ones accidentally cut by anchors or fishing trawlers, or even suspiciously severed by alleged acts of foreign sabotage.
Countries are really starting to realize, how important these cables are and how much disruption is caused when they're damaged.
Keeping internet banking and electricity online is crucial.
Most of the work that we do is for friendly foreign governments.
He believes Ottawa is missing the boat, you could say, on this critical infrastructure, especially as it tries to boost Canada's presence in the north.
Installing a cable is a very physical manifestation of sovereignty. You're really planting the flag in the ground when you're laying a cable.
The lines most of us never really think twice about, let alone see, he says, becoming more important now than ever. Heidi Petrocic, Global News, Halifax.
And that is Global National for this Friday night. I'm Sarah McDonald. Tonight's Your Canada is the view from the Icefields Parkway near Jasper, Alberta. We love seeing Your Canada. Please email your photos to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us once again tomorrow. Have a great night.